Very, very good evening, ladies and gentlemen. A very warm welcome to an amazing book launch that is about to happen in a couple of minutes. This is a very emotional day for Ahava Communications because this is our 50th book launch. And the book to be launched this afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, is called The Treasures of the Sun God by none other than Arun Gupta, who lived most of his years in Canada and is back all the way to his hometown in Kolkata today. All the panelists and our esteemed moderator have given us the feedback that it's an amazing book, and ladies and gentlemen, you will discover in the course of the discussion why they have recommended this book very, very highly to book lovers. And before we start, I would request you to kindly put your cell phones on silent mode, please, or switch them off. Thank you. So, ladies and gentlemen, I take great pleasure in introducing the author Arun Gupta, who did his schooling in Kolkata, completed his Bachelor's of Science in Presidency College, currently Presidency University. He then went on to obtain his Bachelor of Technology from IIT Kharagpur and Master of Business Administration from IIM Kolkata. During his professional career, he worked in India, Malaysia, Oman, Dubai, and Canada in operations, research, and information technologies. Being an engineer, Mr. Gupta has tried to analyze the legends of Konark using scientific thoughts. This book is a culmination of those thoughts, ideas, and questions around this incredible monument. Ladies and gentlemen, as I ask my partner Shushruto to felicitate Mr. Arun Gupta, will you please put your hands together and welcome him with all the warmth and affection Calcutta can offer. Thank you. Thank you, audience. We have with us a great educationist this afternoon, Dr. Anuradha Das, who is the director of Garden High International School and Garden High School, Shonarpur. She's also a chief academic advisor of Shrotikanto Guha Foundation. Dr. Das completed her PhD in high energy nuclear physics from Jadavpur University and postdoctorate work with collaborations with SERA Geneva and Formulab USA. She has been in the field of education for 42 long years, ladies and gentlemen. Give it a long round. 44 years. 44 years. Give it a big round for Dr. Das. Unjita, I would request you to felicitate Dr. Das. Thank you so much. Thank you, Dr. Das, for coming this afternoon in spite of not keeping well. Thank you so much for being here. Ladies and gentlemen, another distinguished personality who needs no introduction in Kolkata, Dr. Julie Banerjee Mehta. Dr. Julie Banerjee Mehta is a Calcutta girl educated in Loreto House and Loreto College. She worked as a literary reviewer and features editor in Australia, Singapore, and Bangkok, and went on to earn her second master's and doctoral degrees in English literature and South Asian studies at the University of Toronto. A specialist in post-colonial and world literature, she taught in the Department of English and Canadian Studies program for many years at the University of Toronto. And holds several prestigious fellowships. Dr. Mehta's translation of Tagore's play Dak Ghor, or Post Office, was performed by Pleiades Theatre Toronto to critical acclaim and earned her the title of one of the 16 most influential South Asians in Canada. She's currently a columnist for T2 Telegraph and resides in Calcutta, teaching postgraduate English at her alma mater, Loreto College. Ladies and gentlemen, for Dr. Julie Mehta, please welcome her. Thank you, Julie Dee, for being here. It's our honor to have you on the panel. Oindrila Dutt. Who can introduce Oindrila Dutt? I will not stop. There are a lot of people who would love to know more about you. Oindrila Dutt, who is an arts and events curator and presenter, having presented events at heritage venues such as Raj Bhavan, Princep Memorial, Lasker Monument, Town Hall, and so on. She has worked with renowned, acclaimed artists such as Pandit Hari Prasad Chaurasia, Amitabh Bachchan, Usha Uttup, Malika Sarabhai, and many, many more celebrities. She has been a broadcaster and a moderator who has interacted with the late Yash Chopra, Mahesh Bhupati, Jaya Bachchan, Malika Sarabhai, Shobha De, Smriti Irani, and others. She's also a freelance writer, having written a book on the Kolkata police, columns for leading dailies, such as the Telegraph and the Times of India, and articles for a variety of publications. She has her own organization named as Open Doors. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Oindrila Dutt on the panel. Dr. Devanita Chakraborty is Associate Professor of English at Shri Shiksha College. After Jadavpur, she did her PhD from the University of Reading. She was subsequently a Charles Wallace Scholar with a visiting fellowship at University of Southampton. Dr. Chakraborty has hosted several literary events with Ian Rankin, Ruskin Bond, Chitra Banerjee Devakaruni, Ashwin Sanghi, and Amish Tripathi, among others. Ladies and gentlemen, please give a round of applause for Dr. Devanita Chakraborty. Thank you so much for being with us. A very popular face in the city, Saira Shah Halim, is a social and peace activist, TEDx speaker and educator, a writer, a theatre personality, image and brand consultant, and a free spirit. Saira is a part of Kolkata Swasthya Sankalp, a low-cost dialysis unit. For the underprivileged. Her short film, Ek Khas Aadmi, can be viewed on YouTube, on NDTV Talkies. Recently, she was awarded with the SARC Women's Award by the SARC Women's Association Dhaka for her contribution in the cultural, literary and bilateral contribution with SARC countries at Dhaka in 2019. Saira is a columnist with India Today and writes on policy and governance. Ladies and gentlemen, Saira Shah Halim. Thank you, Saira. So happy to have you with us this evening. And our moderator this evening, none other than Professor Ashok Vishwanathan. He's a national and international award-winning filmmaker who is former professor and dean at Satyajit Ray and Television Institute, Kolkata. He has directed more than 150 film projects, including feature films, documentaries, short and television shows. Apart from the national awards, he has had 5 Indian panorama entries at the IFFI, is a Charles Wallace Scholar at Cambridge, and has won the Dishahari PFJA, Kalakar and Jaisis Awards, besides the Silver Torchlight Award at Pyongyang. He has been a visiting professor at Tufts University, Boston, and Monmouth University, New Jersey. Thank you, Ashokda. Ladies and gentlemen, for Ashok Vishwanathan. Before I hand over the proceedings to our moderator, ladies and gentlemen, this is a great moment for Mr. Arun Gupta and his family, because in a few seconds, I will request the panelists, along with the author, to formally launch the book. And I would request his daughter, Arundhati, who has come here all the way from Canada, and our publisher of Excellers, Dr. Sudipta Kumar Ghosh, to please join the panelists to launch the book. Please. Ladies and gentlemen, please give a loud round of applause for this very, very special book launch this evening.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. And over to Ashokta.
The book spans from 8th century AD to the current time, and the whole events in the book are connected by whatever has been done by the Eastern Ganga dynasty of Orissa in the 12th, 13th century.
How many years it takes to?
It took about 15 months to write the book.
What kind of inspired this kind of?
See, when I was very small, I was 5 or 6 years, we used to have a house in Puri, Orissa, and from that time till now, I must have visited Puri and Pune for more than a dozen times. And every time I saw the Konark temple, it is not the full temple anymore. The actual temple has been destroyed. But the visitors' part is still open. I was mesmerized by whatever it had. And when I grew up, I delved into its history and its mystery. And I found out that there are various possibilities that how this temple was built, why this temple was built, and how this temple was destroyed. And it means that there are unfathomable reaches under the ocean near this, and there will be always treasure hunters coming in for this. Now, when treasure hunters come for this, the only way they can be protected or they can be prevented from doing so by small people like us, who does not have any intention of using these riches for our own benefit.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Many thanks to Mona, to Ahava Communications for organizing this really wonderful book launch. I only wish there were more spaces here, you know. Normally we operate in a much bigger space, but somehow today there's less space. It would have been better if there was more space, because a book like this does require a lot of space. And I think space is the operative word, Mr. Gupta, for your book, because it's a book that traverses the length and breadth of the world, not just of the country. An extremely interesting book, which has literally a subterranean depth, because it delves deep into the ocean also. So this is a book, and I don't think I'll be overstating, but in Calcutta people may think it's so, that could be compared with the incomparable Sharadindu Bandyopadhyay, the man who could combine historical fiction with genre presentations, the thriller aspect merging effortlessly, dovetailing into the historicity of the narrative, and extremely well researched too, which is the case with Dr. Gupta's book. Now, I'd not take up your time by talking too much about the book right away and not give you any spoiler alerts and tell you exactly about what happened. We'd like to hear the panelists. And while I will ask Oindrila to be the first speaker talking about Konark, just a few points to keep in mind. Mona rightly said this is an historic occasion. It is historic in more senses than one. First, these are the elements which I found to be extremely significant in this book. First, the simplicity of the language and the presentation. Rare to find these days, where jargon seems to dominate in many books. Books that you can't get through. Oindrila was in fact talking about some authors and their books where it's difficult to get through. There are many who say they've read Ulysses, and you can doubt it. Is there anyone here who's read the entire Ulysses by James Joyce? Difficult. Yes.
Yes, but with great difficulty.
With difficulty and with a great deal of effort. But it's effortless, this book, you know. And that's the first thing, the use of the language. It's so readable. Second is, the history is fascinating. You come to know of the history of the world, and you traverse different centuries, moving in time, as it were. So there's time travel, second aspect, which is very important. And suddenly, unobtrusively, you are face to face with a mystery. A strange mystery and strange happenings that can take you unawares. So there is the element of surprise, which is very, very important too. And then, of course, there are the relationships, the bit different trajectories, the different positions, and Dr. Gupta's own experience has come to the fore. His visits to different countries, meeting diplomats, people in official positions, their way of thinking, sometimes bending the law, greed, all of that. So these are things that you might keep in mind. We'll hear more of that soon. But first, over to Oindrila, who would like to talk about Konark, the history of Konark, which is crucial to this novel.
Thank you so much. Ashok, yes, Konark has always been a place that's fascinating for me. But what is fascinating about this book is the way it juxtaposes the ancient, our heritage with the modern and ultra-modern, technology, scientific. So we go back to a time when there's trading between Italy, Europe and India, China settling here, the Chinese, and we go back to how Konark came into being, the Eastern Ganga dynasty, Narasimha Deva. I think what is fascinating is that Mr. Gupta has touched upon the mystery of Konark. And Konark is one of the biggest unsolved mysteries that we have in our country from ancient times. There's first the matter of how it was destroyed. It was initially 200 feet high, and now it's just 100. And how did that happen? some people say that while it was being built, I think it was a period of 10 years and then another 4 years in the making. So why did that happen? There are accounts which say that while it was being built, part of it collapsed because there's that matter of the black stone, the magnetic fields created, the matter of the image which was suspended, not placed down below, and whether the weight could be taken by that stone. And that is how maybe it collapsed. Then how was it destroyed? Was it a Puri Jagannath temple, the Pandas, the priests there who wanted it destroyed because it was taking away from them? The black pagoda at one time far overshadowed the white pagoda in its attraction. Was it the sailors? They say one theory is that the Portuguese got it destroyed because Konark had that magnetic field, and I'm not going to give you any spoiler alerts, but it's dealt with in the book, which lured, which drew ships, which crashed into the shoreline and was destroyed. Then there's also this theory that the Kalinga Jina there, the Konark temple, the image there, had this huge stone. With the first rays of the sun, it was supposed to sparkle so brightly while it was still dark. That was like a beacon for the ships. Part of all this is dealt with here. Is that image in the National Library? That is also a National Museum in Delhi. That is also a theory. The main Arunastam, I think that was called, that was taken to Puri. Now, Konark is fascinating. The fact that it's got these 12 wheels, the 12 months, the hours of the day, the 7 horses, it's full of symbolism. And the erotica that you see there, when you think about it, in those days, what was it that people had to entertain themselves? Almost nothing. So that was their entertainment. And that is something that the king had the farsightedness to understand. And on the other hand, there's the juxtaposition. You're a man who's been to IIT, you're obviously really into scientific development. So we have this thing of mini subs, etc., which are fascinating, the parallels that you draw. And I'm just going to stop there. I'd like to come back to it later. But I think what is wonderful about this are the many elements. There's romance, there's crime, so it's like a rom-com. And there is the ancient, the modern. And I just want to end with saying that Konark has many references. Aini Akbari, Abul Fazl, he talks about Konark, and he talks about it as a magnificent edifice without any damage. So it was certainly there. What happened later, none of us know really, and none of us will know.
Thank you, Angela. It was really good of you to set the ball rolling, as it were, talking about Konark. In fact, the book begins with a kind of a prologue. It's set in what we know as Mahabalipuram or Mamallapuram, after the king Mamalla. It was very interesting, and it's a historical event which is described with great detail, as also the events in Konark. And it was good that Oindrila mentioned the erotica. In fact, he presents both the point of view. The common person's look, the gaze at those sculptures as maybe something which is vulgar maybe, or the eroticism of it is missed, and rather the physical actions look you in the eye. That's one view. But the more liberal view is that those were relationships of all kinds, long before the ages of transgenders and LGBTQ plus, etc. Those relationships are also shown, woman with woman, man with woman, man with man. And so beautifully done, and the beauty of it is the main thing, and that has been brought out by Dr. Gupta's book. Now I will be asking Dr. Das to continue, and as she gets prepared, one short question for Dr. Gupta. How would you react to Oindrila's analysis of the Konark part of your story? Just a quick comment from you.
I would like to say that there has been many instances and even records that there was trade between Romans and the southern India. Now, there it is unbelievable that people have come up to southern India and they didn't go to Kalinga. But there are no records of any visits or any trades with Kalinga. So what happened to those ships? These are Roman trading ships and they got lost. Why they got lost? How they got lost? I think that creates an interesting idea of possibly what had happened during those days. And with that, I have extended the philosophy of this into the Ganga dynasty of Odisha, which excelled in doing whatever they were trying to do. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Gupta, for that response. As he is wont to do, has combined science. He is a man of science, but he has also placed for the supernatural. There are elements of the supernatural. Divine intervention. Was the fact that Marcus's ship was destroyed an act of divine intervention? The Kalinga representative of a cyclone, a god which frowned upon Marcus because he was moving towards greener pastures. Who knows? Having already got his fill from Mamallapuram. Now we move on to another lady of science, and this is only for Julie Mehta's ears, that whenever I see someone who's an expert in nuclear physics, having just seen Oppenheimer, I wonder whether nuclear fission was such a wisecrack or not. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mona, for the kind words. A big thank you to Dr. Gupta for writing such a novel to catch the interest of the present generation that is growing up. You know, we've grown up on Sharad Even before that, we've grown up on Enid Blyton, on Secret 7 and Famous 5. So when a student, and I'll keep talking about my students, when they start reading at early ages, they like to read mystery. That captures their mind. So it's a very intelligent way. Of course, you've loved to write this book and you've written it, but it is serving a great purpose, how to combine mystery with humanities, science with humanities, because this is the time when there's a lot of talk on transdisciplinary dispositions, and with the IB market catching up like mad, you know, we all want students to study the sciences and humanities to make the spectrum broad. And students now in high school are also fighting with their parents and saying, no, we will not do the joint entrance. We need a more balanced approach to academics. So these books will enable students to read, because here is a person, a writer who went to IIT and who has written, and such fine humanities, such fine language. So while the students are now going to the librarians of various books to ask for books on violence openly, there are books parallelly which are coming up which will make them sensitive to their surroundings. And that is a big thing. And I'm not saying that science is not important. Of course it is, and that is why even when I was growing up, I wanted to be a part of that big change. And because science is so important, we need more of the importance of humanities parallelly. So thank you very much for that. One more question. That is, are you still working in your scientific engineering field, or you're fully into writing?
No, I am fully retired now.
And you're into writing?
When time comes, I write, but retirement is retirement.
Yes.
I would like
yes.
to enjoy my retirement.
So what will be your message, if you can reply later on also, I'd like to know, what would be your message to youngsters about writing? And if you didn't write, what would have been your other passion that you would have continued with after retirement?
I think we'll ask him to answer that later.
As I said,
Let's
yes.
all have a
Yes.
say. Let's not go directly to him. Let me sort of
absolutely.
monitor
So I
it.
said you can answer later.
Yes,
on.
that would be better, because then
Yes.
he can absorb all the information and then
And the most
answer.
important thing is, as Oindrila said, you've linked the past with postmodernism, modernism. You've brought in the cell phone, it's ringing and somebody's going up, so they can relate very well with this, rather than being thrust with one Sharadendu or Kiritila when they're growing up.
Now, let
So
me
they
ask
will
you a
be-
question. Since you are in charge of several schools, you're saying that students at the high school level have this predilection for violence.
Middle school especially, they will go and
Can you
very
explain?
openly, they will very openly ask the librarian, have you got any books on violence we want to read? So it's quite shocking, isn't it?
Cinema, our literature,
Our cinema that is coming up. Well, there is a clientele for every type of book and every movie. Yes, yes, whatever. Limited time of parents to spend with their children, we cannot rule that out. So they're all coming together. But yes, I was quite shocked. I talked to a lot of my librarians and this has come up. So in these times, it is even more important to make it transdisciplinary.
In fact, this is like in the late 60s and 70s in London, when Anthony Burgess comes up with A Clockwork Orange in the Nat Satch language. And that's the dystopian world that we are going into. Would you believe it? Because I come from the world of cinema, I'm just taking your permission and mentioning that the majority of the web series, the OTT platforms, and the films deal with gangsters, gangs, big politicians related to crime. Banglaতে একটা কথা আমরা বলি দুর্বৃত্তায়ন, meaning politics and crime go hand in hand. So this is a strange world we're living in, and it's a world that people in the UK and US have already gone through, and Russia particularly. Immediately after the Soviet Union crumbled, there was this huge spate of violence and mafia. So now I'd like to ask Devnita to say something. You want to talk about the genre as such. Could you tell us something about this genre? Because this is a little different, as Dr. Das pointed out. It has its moments of violence. There is the thrill element, but it's so measured, and it's so subterranean in more senses than one. So would you like to comment on the genre?
Hello, it's working? Right. Yes, thank you very much, and thank you for making me a part of this wonderful event. Very happy to be here, to have read this book. People have talked about how remarkable it is, how the history is brought into the present day and made relevant, and there's a toing and froing between the present and the past, which has been brilliantly handled. I think you'd like to speak about the plotting, which I think is meticulous, and it must have taken a lot of time and care. Very well done. And Anuradha, you were talking about violence. I think I want to talk about love, because for me, I think this is a labor of love. Somewhere it was mentioned that you had a family home when you were young in Orissa, maybe in Puri. And I think the seed of this book was sown at that moment where you went for many family holidays. And this is a place very close to your heart. That is evident as we read the books. He loves each sand, as it were, on the beach. And like people have mentioned earlier, there's a love story. There is love for history, which is also very evident. His love for science shines through. And I think this is a book which, one thing that I don't know whether you, was when I saw the book first, his name is Arun, and you've written about the sun god. and it's a Gupta book, and so it's a book after your own heart. I think you're the best person to write this book. I would love for you to talk about how this book grew out of love.
You want to say something? You can if you want to.
I would rather say at the end.
Okay, all right. All right, then I'll ask Julie to step in right now. There is one remark, I hope you don't mind if we analyze it a little critically. This is my personal view, and I may be wrong here. Sometimes the documentary aspect of the book, the documentation, the historical clarification and expansion has in a sense subsumed the thriller aspect of it. What is your take on that?
Wonderful, thank you for that segue, Ashok. Being a little person, I'll just stand up so you can see me at the end. I'm loud and clear, I know, but I'd like to say that it's a very ambitious project. And first of all, what struck me was in a University of Toronto, and this is really thanks to Anuradha Di, that she has opened another little window. I had in a literature class about 20% of engineering students to take my elective course, which was offered, endowed by the Chancellor, on Asian literatures written in Canada. Believe it or not, the best essays on criticism of the literature that we study, world literature, was by students of the science mode. Yes, it was not the liberal arts who won it. Because the way that the book has been ordered, and I mean structured by that, is so unusually put together. It's almost as if a whole lot of sutras of different colors have been woven in. And moving into the heart of the matter, as Ashok wants me to do, I will say that recently, if you think of people in world literature who've made it not only to the great prizes, like the Booker or even the Nobel, you think of Vijayanagar, Salman Rushdie's book. And the moment I opened this, I called somebody who's doing her research, one of my students in Toronto, and I said, look, this is a book that you have to read before you write your doctoral thesis, before you finish it, because this is obviously been the order of the day. Because of this interdisciplinary connection now between the liberal arts and the sciences, and I have two spectacularly bright MA students here from Calcutta University with whom we've done Amitav Ghosh, and I'm talking about, if you remember, this book again reminded me of Ghosh's In an Antique Land. So the connection between centuries, collapsing the border between countries, and most importantly, I think, weaving in love stories, whether you're thinking of Narasimha and Amba, whether you're thinking of Arunava and Anu, or whether you're thinking of the wonderful, mysterious story as to why they hadn't got together and wasted so much time, the lovers, Madhav and Kuntala. I feel that if you allow me at some stage during this conversation, I would like to read 1 minute of 2 snippets from the book, which show us mythology has been made absolutely real for us in the way the tantric tradition has been described by the Bhairavi girl, and also the way that the erotic has become the enduring, in the way Ambalika actually, Devadasi allures and seduces Narasimha to her. So,
In fact, just reacting to that, that particular scene, I'm seeing it as a scene visually, when the lady puts her hand and covers the face. And it is then that they get involved in what may be politely called osculation. And that is a brilliant scene. That's a flow of emotion, and almost in the fashion of a Henri Pierre Roche, who wrote his first novel, a love story, after he probably crossed 60, Jules Légine, which was made into a film by François Truffaut, one of the enfants terribles of the French Nouvelle Vague. You, at your age, have beautifully described a love scene with all its physicality, which is very important. The physical aspect of love can never be ignored, you know, in order to be polite. That is what I found most attractive.
I'll just buttress your argument
Yes.
with a little reading. Listen up. Narasimha felt her soft body with his hands. He could see her, oh so closely now. Amba sat on his lap, looked like a blooming lotus. She removed her upper garment, exposing her breasts. Narasimha touched her breasts and felt an electric shock passing through him. Amba then took off her shirt before helping Narasimha to undress. Then Narasimha had his first experience of physical love, the ultimate pleasure from the union of man and woman. Narasimha's body was melting in the warmth of a woman. To him, she was the goddess of ecstasy. This pleasure was unexplainable, surpassing all enjoyment and happiness in the world. But it did not last for long. Narasimha felt an excruciating pain coming out of his protrusion, the langul, the tail, through the spine. He felt a deep, throbbing ache in his neck, just at the base of his head. He felt as if he was dying. So once again, the devil is in the details and God is in the details too. The way this scientist uses the gerund, the living grammatical do word, the verb, hats off, hats off.
Thank you, Dr. Gupta, to say something now. It's high time that he spoke. Yes.
I will just say a few things how the idea came to my mind. When I was very small, we had a house in Puri. I was then about 5 or 6 years old. From then I had visited Konark for at least a dozen times, if not more. But every time I went to Konark, it mesmerized me. In fact, the Konark that you see today, I have seen more than that when I first visited it, because they have removed the debris, and those were not debris, those were beautifully created statues. Now, when I grew up, I felt why people are not promoting Konark. Why everybody from outside comes, sees Taj Mahal and goes by. This is much, much more than Taj Mahal. So I delved into its history and its mystery. Now, when I went into it, I found that there are steel beams still strewn around Konark. No other temple in Odisha used steel beams. Why Konark used steel beams? Why Konark was supposed to be much higher than all the other temples in Odisha, which are very, very renowned temples, like. And then I found out that the temple was built with the idea that the whole structure can sustain itself. How can it sustain itself? With so much of beams, iron beams. The only thing is you have to deflate its weight. And the only way to deflate its weight is by using lodestone. And to my mind, they used lodestone definitely, and the reasons why the other ships were broken and there were no trace of them is because there are already lodestones in the vicinity. Because it's very difficult to carry lodestone from Rome to here. Now, once we assume that these are correct, then it is not only one ship, but there are many, many ships that have been destroyed near Konark, and there are many, many unfathomable treasures lying around. And once there are treasures, there will be treasure hunters. And the treasure hunters will come every year with new technology, every year with new scientific invention to find it out, because the government of a country will not allow them to come and take this. So they have to come in a way that they can bypass the government.
Like nothing.
Right. Now, again assuming that the treasure hunters are continuously coming to access the treasures, there will be simple people like us, like Maddie, like Arun, who will stand guard to the treasures of this God. And this is what I try to bring up.
Very succinctly put, Dr. Gupta. Now, if there are any other questions that people want to ask, you may. And then I think Andrea would like to read something. But if there is any other question you would like to ask.
You asked in the beginning about your passion for writing and what is your message to youngsters who want to write. I mean, why this? And if it wasn't this, what would you have as an alternative?
I didn't write the book to bring any message, but the message is that treasure hunters will be there, always, all the time. And we, the simple people, we have the power to protect it. That's the message.
Just to answer your question, and in between somewhere, very clearly, Dr. Gupta says, the treasure is not what is in the ocean, for which the bounty hunters come. The treasure of the sun god is the blessings. So, you know, it brought me right back to my childhood. Om Bhur Bhurvasha Tatsavitur Varenam Bhargo Devasya Dhimahi Dhiyo Na Prachodayat Om Jabako Shrama Shankashna Kashyapayan Mahaduting Dhandaring Sharpapapagnam Pranotashmi Divakar.
Yes, and I'll ask Angela to read, but just one quick flash. You know, the fact that many of these ships, some with bounty hunters, some just going there like Marcus went, hoping for greener pastures maybe, reminds me of Debussy's famous piece, The Sirens, where, you know, the travelers, they go there and they're lured by the sirens and then they meet their death. You know, it's a very interesting siren. So Claude Debussy, the great French impressionist composer, who is famous for other pieces, of course, but the sirens is an important piece. So now over to Indrila.
Okay, I'll quickly do this because this I think is very relevant to all this about lodestones and the explanation as to what could have happened. Now, Nabil is somebody who is helping would-be treasure hunters. So obviously, totally commercial. Nabil dived into the sea and slowly descended towards the bottom. Then he saw something unusual. It was an opening in the rock, like a crack, with water gurgling in and out. Being an experienced diver, Nabil entered through the crack. To his surprise, inside the crack, the rock formations were different. Instead of maintaining their level or forming slopes, the rocks were spiked in form. From a distance, he could see debris and boulders at the bottom or stuck on the rocks. He navigated through the spikes, keeping a safe distance. Then, suddenly, he felt a huge force pushing him towards the rocks. It was impossible to swim against the force. He was smashed against the rock and pinned to it. The oxygen tank pressed against him. He opened the ziplock of his suit and got himself out of the suit. The tubes from the oxygen tank tore off. He tried to manually connect to the oxygen cylinder but could not. It must have been stuck badly in a corner, he thought. He held his breath and removed the camera from his headgear, swung it across his shoulder and swam vigorously. Slowly he could make some headway towards the crack. Evening was approaching. The sea was plunging into deeper darkness and he was running out of oxygen. He was tired of fighting the turbulence. By the time he reached the crack, he could not hold his breath any further. As he tried to hurry out of the opening, he got caught in the crack and could not untangle himself from it. He felt his lungs were filling up with water. He was drowning and his lungs were bursting from inside. He thought of his aunt and then it was all dark in his watery grave. That was quite, actually, when you read the whole scene, quite spine-chilling, and it reflects something that happened before, which gives you an idea of all the ships that were lured to seek their riches there were destroyed, quite justly perhaps, and why the Portuguese, maybe it is true, wanted Konark destroyed because their ships were being destroyed. Maybe not, maybe somebody else.
Yes, and you know this use of the phrase watery grave, it happens more than once. It's almost like a leitmotif, you know, the watery grave. So that's a very interesting element in this.
Yes, it's an interesting read, and I'm sure it will appeal to students, youngsters of this generation, and it will actually help us educators to show them the link between the sciences and the humanities, that you need both, and you cannot really compare one with the other, but take both in your stride through life. That's what I feel, and it's an interesting way of letting different students in different streams to know about history and to think about how you can be sensitive to your surroundings. Thank you.
A wonderful experience of world literature, of global literature, and I hope Mr. Gupta's book about the treasures of the sun god will find a global audience, because the readership will find every aspect of India's traditions and India's modernity coming together, juxtaposed together in a seamless sutra. I would recommend this book for students as well as people who are just ordinary readers, because it brings to mind what the mysteries are behind the great temple of Konark. It also brings in ideas of how Hindu principalities during the time of the 13th century were extremely well governed, and though it was kingship and royalty, they were extremely meticulous in the way that they preserved their tradition and their histories. Very well written book, and I think this will hit a high once it becomes more prevalent to other readers.
I think what was fascinating is the juxtaposition of the historic. What is ancient history about our traditions, about the rich heritage that we have in this country, and the ultra modern, the technically advanced times that we live in. So we have the Konark story in all its glory, 13th century, 15th, 17th century. And on the other hand, we have mini subs, exploration underwaters today. Yet, it is a reflection of Narasimha Deva and Amba, and now the current Maddie and the two sets of, well, romance is one set and the other one. But I find that really nice. There's romance, there's crime, there's suspense, and there's our country's heritage. As somebody said today, it's multi-plural. We're trying to show that this country welcomed everyone with open arms. We should remember that. That's what made it a great country. And there are great lessons in that. And Konark itself is absolutely fascinating. Absolutely fascinating.
Well, it was a very interesting book launch that we had today. The Treasure of the Sun God by Arun Gupta. A very important book in my opinion because it combines historical fiction with documentation and has a very interesting climax, you know. It can be even called a thriller in a certain sense. So it's a combination of genres, but the historicity is of the most importance as far as I'm concerned.
So it was a pleasure to be on the panel for this fascinating book, The Treasure of the Sun God by Mr. Arun Gupta. I think he's written a very fetching account of the socio-political climate of the 13th century. Though the book is a fiction, but it gives the readers a great perspective of how things were during, like Lord Narasimha. Now here the sun god, we all have been to Konark, but here the sun god is personified and we see the person as an entity, as a living real person, what his relationship was with his parents, his wives, his siblings, his children, and overall there's this air of mystique around Konark. I also felt there's an air of esotericism. There's an air of mystery, and I think the mystery of Konark starts unraveling in this book. So do pick it up. It's a compelling read, and a lot of readers will resonate to parts of the book itself. It's fascinating. You will really travel back in time and understand the history of Kalinga. How these temples stood the test of time. So do give it a read.